So to start, I guess we'll start with this simple win for white position that is known as building a bridge in endings. Of course, I should have said welcome to the ending class, just so people will know where we are, but you already know. So in a position like this, the win is very one-dimensional. It's very, very simple. But in order for this to win, in order for you to win, you just have to think to yourself, it has to, rather than just memorize the moves, you have to memorize the concept. If you memorize the concept, you will always get it right. It's like when I teach it to my students, I've never had when I ask them and then they failed, because things have to make sense. Okay, now, the idea in this position is to win the game, if to put it in the most primitive, simplistic way, is to queen the white pawn. There's not going to be a checkmate attack or something. You have to queen a pawn. How to queen the pawn? You have to get the king out. But when you show your king, the black rook is going to go crazy with checks. Check, 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 check. And you will always either threaten the pawn or threaten to go behind the pawn and stop it. So the white king is going to be a little confined to his pawn. So just going out with the king is not going to solve it. You have to accomplish a few things on the way to victory. One of them, you have to make sure the black king is further away from the pawn. Okay, that always has to be the first step. When the black king is away from the pawn, he is cut off. He cannot approach the pawn in one move, which is very useful for reasons you will see very shortly. And he is not participating. That's one step. The second step is we have to use our rook for shelter against that menacing checking opponent rook. Let's do it move by move. There's more than one winning move in this position, but I'm just going to show you the most direct way. So rook g1 check, immediately checking the king. And you notice that the poor king has to go further. For example, if he tries to be a smart aleck and go this way, saying I'm not going away from the pawn, I'm going towards the pawn, then he makes life very easy for the white player by playing this. Then the win becomes really very simple, because now there's no way to check with the rook on f2. I would have loved to check you with the rook, but I can't. And my next move is most likely going to be e8 equals queen with a prosaic victory. So after the check, he has to go away. h7, h8 doesn't really matter. We'll play h7 because it's the most challenging move. Now, once again, we can see that if we bring the king too soon out in this position, then the rook is going to check us. And that's how you try to go out again, check, and you have to play some move that defends the pawn. Let's try this, for example. And I'm going to check you again. And doesn't matter. If you, let's say, go away from the pawn, then I'm going to attack the pawn. So you have to immediately go back. And guess who's also going back? The rook. So you have to go this way, and then after check, I'm attacking the king and keeping an eye on the pawn. So you have to defend it. And I can check it one more time. In other words, this is very unproductive. All those checks are leading nowhere. So what do you need to do? You need to use your rook, as we said, for a shelter. So once the king has moved, we need to play the move rook to g4. That is maybe the hardest move in winning with a bridge. Why is it harder? The hardest, because you wonder, why am I not going to g5? After all, you will see that in many times later on, the rook might go to g5 anyways. Why am I losing this tempo here? Why not rook g5? The reason is very simple. You want to keep this rook away from the black king as much as possible. Had you played rook to g5, then immediately the king would harass the rook, and that is a bit annoying. If the rook leaves the g file, the king is going to come closer. If the rook stays on the g file, well, what have we achieved by playing rook g5? So the long story short, the rook comes only to g4. Now, black can try one of several moves. For example, a most logical move would be to play here, trying to cut the king off from one direction, so he can only go to f7. But now white wins like so. King f7, threatening to queen the pawn, check, threatening to queen the pawn, you got to check again, and now I'm playing king f6. Now, I am not threatening to queen the pawn, but I am threatening to create a cover, as we will see in a second. So let's first see what if black continues to check, just like we saw in the previous examples. If you check again, this time the king goes to e5, and I'm threatening to queen the pawn, and after a check, my rook is just in time to cover. Now look how all the parts of the equation fell into place. My king is out, so the pawn is ready to queen. My rook is being used for shelter as a bridge in front of the black rook. And notice the black king cannot reach the pawn in one move. If this king was on g7, then all this maneuver was worthless because he would just trade, and the king from here would come here and he just takes the pawn and he makes a simple draw. As it is, the king is too far to stop the pawn. White is just winning. Some of you might say, okay, but in this position white is not threatening to queen. So why must I check? Why can't I just play a move, for example, like, okay, your move. Well, now we get the point. Now the rook is going to go to g5. Now the rook is going to come one step closer in order to provide that bridge, that shelter to the king on f5 and e5. Notice again how this king is just useless. Now if you attack my rook, it's too late. So for example, you can do, let's say, check, and I'm just going to go to e6, threatening to queen the pawn. And if you check, then guess what? My rook is again in time. Or, if in this position, again, you will try to just mark time, say by playing this move, then my rook is ready to come and interfere between the rook and the pawn. After check, my king has a classical way to hide behind the rook. Very, very elegant. Do we all understand that? Do we have any questions about the process? Does anybody have any question about it? Again, don't memorize the moves, memorize the concept, because we can move this whole thing one file to the left and it'll still be fine. Everything moves to the left. Of course, the black rook can't, but everything else would move one file to the left. It'll be exactly the same victory. Exactly the same kind of win. The idea is we want to queen the pawn. To queen the pawn, we need to get our king out. If we get the king out too soon, the rook is going to check it to death, and what's worse, he's going to keep him tied to the pawn, or else he's just going to attack the pawn. So, step one, like we said, move the king away. Check him, make sure that he goes. We said that the king cannot go to f6. He has to go sideways. Already the king was pushed one full file to the side. Now, we again saw that if we play king f7, we're going to be checked from a distance forever, and the pawn is not going to reach the queen square. We need the assistance of our rook, and what do? We are going to play rook to g4. Again, not rook g5, where the king is attacking the rook and there's no time to get the king out. And now, no matter what black does, if he checked us here, for example, we will just go to f7, and the pawn is going to queen shortly. If he tries to play, let's say here, this time, to prevent the king from going to f7, guess what? We have another side. You cannot cover both sides. Now I'm queening the pawn, unless you check me. If you check me, I'm just going to go here, threatening to king the pawn. And after check, king f6, we have reached exactly the same position that I showed before. And again, in this position, I'm not threatening to queen the pawn because the rook is attacking it, but I'm threatening to bring my rook to g5 and use it as a shelter to my king. So whether you check me and I just go here ready to cover with my rook, or you mark time, and then I'm playing here, winning. Yes, did you have a question?
Actually, if black rook starts on g2 on the same file as his own king.
If the black rook starts, let's start from the beginning. So let's say we're here. You want this rook to be where?
On g2.
Here?
Yes.
Okay, so let's pretend for a moment I'm just going to play some random move and play here. So
Go ahead.
you're asking, or you want?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Okay. In this position, then the simple solution is now if the rook is when the rook is on the other side where it started when he was on a2. In other words, when he was here, he was ready to check on the long side here forever, sideways and also like this, vertically or horizontally. When we get to this position, he is now away from that side, and therefore I can just go rook d3. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. So now in this position, all I want to do is king to d7 and queen the pawn. Because now my rook is sheltering from any checks. Can you see that? Everybody can see that? Yeah. So let's pretend that the rook changes his mind. He goes back to a2. Now we can just start exactly where we left off. Rook to g3 check. It doesn't matter if it's g1, g2, or g3. The king again will have to go sideways. And then rook g4. We have exactly the same position that we discussed before. The rook is going to be used as a sheltering bridge for the white king to avoid the perpetual checks of the rook. Is this clear for everybody? All of you have it? Great. Wonderful. Has anybody covered this with you guys? There are some positions that are really like the multiplication tables or the ABCs. They just must be learned, must be remembered, memorized. This is one of them, because this can happen a lot in a chess game. This position, this is a typical position. So if you have never seen it before, I can tell you that white to move, black to move doesn't matter. It's always a win for white. This is a position that's winning for white. And you'll see why it's important, because there are further positions where the pawns are less advanced that makes a difference, where it makes a difference. So in this position, why doesn't it matter if it's white to move or black to move? Because even if it's black to move, there is no way for him to improve his position. His rook is completely stuck on the last rank, preventing mate. If you even, let's say I make some move, let's say you play here just because it's black to move, then you're going to get mated. This is going to lead to checkmate. So black cannot improve the position. If it's black to move, he can make some random move, okay, and then it's going to be white to move. And of course, if it's white to move, we just start as white. So how to win? Okay, this is the best way. Of course, it doesn't matter if the black king is on h8, g8, or f8, but the most challenging is if the king is on g8. Then it's the toughest. Why? Because you have to now show how to win. So, rook g7, oopsie, not that. Rook g7 check. Okay, this is now it forces the black king to choose a side. And that's why it's the hardest example, because, okay, let's pretend that the king goes here, then it's easy. Check, 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 and winning. I'm winning the rook. Even if I just traded the rook, I would still queen the pawn. So here I'm just winning the rook. It's even easier. Is it understood so far? Very, very simple. Okay, let's pretend that after my check, the king moves to f8. Now white wins by playing the move rook h7. A very quiet move, threatening checkmate. You notice that the black king is in dire straits. He's about to get mated. If he tries to run this way, then I'm simply going to check, and I'm going to trade rooks, and I'm going to push my pawn, and of course I'm about to queen with an easy win. Very, very simple. If you try to run the other way, well, we have seen this before. Once again, we push the pawn with check. The king will have to go here, check, winning. Understood? So from this starting position, white to move, black to move, doesn't matter, always winning for white. Just to mention, why isn't white playing this move? Some players will say, well, why do I have to check? I can just go here. Now I'm threatening to play f7. This move doesn't spoil the win, but it just makes it longer. Because now black is not facing a mate, his rook is free, and he can play here. And now we just have to repeat the position, because I cannot push my pawn, and he is threatening to play rook takes pawn check. Be careful of that. So I'd have to go back here, threatening mate. He'd have to go here, and then I'm going to play check. Well, this is winning just like we saw before. It doesn't spoil the win, but it just forces us to repeat to get to this position one more time. Understood? Black to move, white to move, same thing. Okay. So, next position. We're going to have an almost similar position, except for we moved everything one square to the side, like that. Okay, now this position, and again, doesn't matter if the king is on g8 or h8, this position is always a draw, no matter who's on the move. Because as you will see, There is just no way to keep this king away from the corner. So again, we put it with black to move. If it's white to move, of course, it's even easier. Black just is going to make some move and say to white, okay, do the worst that you can to me. And there's no way to get him out. You can play check, and I go to the corner. You can play check, and I'm going to go out of the corner. There is just no way to advance. No way. This is just a forced draw. The only way to do it is if black makes some terrible mistake. But the king is just going to run between these two squares, and the rook is always going to stay on the last rank to make sure there's no mate. Of course, if you let me, let's pretend that you play, I don't know, some move like, let's say, like this, that doesn't threaten mate. Then I can always go all the way back, even if I feel like it, and start checking the white king forever. Even if you stay on the rank, it's a draw. If you don't, everything is just a draw. Simple. Understood? And like I said, doesn't matter if it's black to move, white to move, always a draw. Always. But let me make a slight change to the position. And let's pretend that we add one more pawn, like this. And some might say, okay, what's the big difference? Who cares if there's 1 pawn, 2 pawns, or 8 pawns on that file? It looks like you're still not going to be able to queen them. Well, not true. In this position, it's not true. This position is winning. Why is it winning? Let's see if anybody can use their imagination and tell me, why do you think this might win? What is the difference? I mean, at the end of the day, you can check me. I mean, if let's say, for example, let's say black goes here, and white checks, and here, and checks, and here. How did that help? That helped none. That helped nothing. Furthermore, if we get to the starting position, let's say after this, and let's pretend white plays here, just for the sake of argument, and black played here, and now we played check, and here, and now it looks like we're good and ready to play rook h8 check, and the plan is that after check, g6, again, looks awesome, right? White is ready to play rook h8 checkmate, and he's winning the game, hallelujah, except, oopsie, rook takes pawn, king takes, what do we have? Stalemate, no win. So, from the starting position, let's say again black will play his move, rook b8, because he can't do anything but just kill time. And why would white win? Well, I'll explain to you. White will win because he's going to give up 1 pawn to trade rooks and transpose into an easily winning king and pawn ending. How does he do that? He really wants to push the g-pawn, but he knows that if he does it right now, that the black rook is going to start checking it, and it's going to be annoying. So first things first, rook a6. Again, it doesn't matter if the rook is on the c file, the d file, or the a file, or the b file, and if the other rook is over somewhere else. We play here. The point is to avoid any checks. Again, you notice that both the king and the rook are pretty stuck. They cannot do anything productive. If you, for example, go here, I might even play this with my king, and I'm just going to help support my pawn. So that's not going to be useful. So black will mark time, I'm guessing by something like this. And now white will play the move rook f6. Again, this is preparation for what's about to come. Okay, let's say, just for the sake of accuracy, maybe I will start with the move g7. Oops. Here. This is probably even simpler, so that there's no tricks and no, just to force black to stay, because if the black rook leaves, he is going to get mated by rook a8. So that's probably the simplest. He has to mark time. Then my rook comes to f6. Oops. The mouse is refusing. We'll insist. Rook f6. Again, all the black pieces are tied down. The black king cannot even make a legal move. So he's going to have to mark time by playing this, for example. And now the win is, excuse me, rook f8, rook takes, pawn takes, queen, king takes, king h7, and the white pawn marches all the way to the queen square. Winning. Understood? Okay. One more position that is from the same family, so to speak. We have a position like this. So until now we saw, when the position is advanced, when the king and the pawn are advanced 1 square, then it's a win regardless of who's on the move. Here, it is very important who's on the move. Really, really important. If it's white to move here, he wants to get his king here to g6. If he got the king here, he will win. In other words, if black just says, well, I don't have anything productive to do, let me just make a move here and mark time, that's already lost. Now he lost. Why is he lost? Because after king g6, we are going to get to that position that we just saw before, that we are familiar with. There is no way to stop the move f6 here. You can check or you can mark time, do whatever you want. My next move is going to be f6. If you let me mate you on the last rank, I can do that as well if the rook leaves the rank. I'm not very picky. So we know this is already winning. Let's say after here, here, no need to even continue, right? We already know that from previous. So the question is, okay, therefore if it's black to move, since it's white to move, we know king g6 is going to win. What should black do? Yes? Rook b6, exactly. A very, very important idea to cut the king off, not allow the king to advance to the 6th rank. If you play this move against a grandmaster, chances are that he's going to offer you a draw. Because if he sees that you know this move, maybe he will try a few more moves to drive you crazy, but he already has it in his mind that even if you are an 8-year-old kid or a 6-year-old kid, he's not going to beat you. He knows it. Because that's just the proof that you know how not to lose this position. And what is the idea? White can just mark time with his rook, and black can do the same. We can dance like this until midnight, that's no problem. Eventually, sooner or later, in order to try to make any progress, you will try to push the pawn. But by pushing the pawn, when white is good and ready to play king g6, he has lost his shelter. Now the black rook goes all the way back to this position. And guess what? Now it's a draw. The king has no place to hide anymore. After king g6, it looks like white is just about to give checkmate, except that the rook is starting to check, and now it's just a draw. No chance to win anymore. You go out, I can just check you forever. Even if I don't, even let's say you play here, and I make some move with my king, doesn't even matter. There's no way to make progress anymore. White has to concede the draw in this kind of a position. Understood? Yes? Okay. So, one more rook ending that I want to show you, which I know our friend to the left already knows. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Please.
So if the pawn is a center pawn, a king or queen pawn,
Yes.
that's over. For white's first move, if he goes to the 6th rank, it's not the same, right?
I need you to show me 1 second. I'll build a position. Is that good?
That's fine.
Okay.
And white to move before, you said he could just move the king to the 6th rank.
Yes.
But that's not the same here, right? That's a different position?
No, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
It's still a win if it's white to move, and it's still a draw if it's black to move. Because if it's white to move, he wants to go here. And he wins. Because if you check me, I'm just here. And now my threat of checkmate forces you to go back, else you get checkmated, and then guess what? The rook swings to the other side. Game over. No way to stop rook coming to h8, either with mate or winning the rook.
But if the rooks were on the opposite side, or the kings were on the long side right now, if the black king were on the short side and the black rook were on the long side, then you could check them from the side.
That's right. That's different. That is very different. Yes. If you can check me every time, the point is that I have to hide. If I cannot use my pawn to shelter myself, it's always going to be a draw. So, of course, here, if it's white, just make a move. Let's pretend this position just to throw in a move, and black plays here, then it's a draw. Now we can save the game. The king cannot cross. The moment the pawn pushes, I'm going to go all the way down and check from a distance. What you mean is like, if I have a position like this, again, I'll try to build the position a little differently. If let's say my king is here, and my pawn is here, and let's say my rook is here. Yeah, a position like this, then of course the rook is already ready to check. I mean, I don't have a place to hide. So by playing a move like this, it's just useless for me because of the check. I don't have a pawn to cover. Yes?
You can go around your pawn and then use it in the end of the shelter.
No, because my rook is always going to be on the 3rd rank. So let's pretend, for example, I'm going to play some bad moves for black just to get to that. Let's say check, here, check, here. White got a lot, right? White position improved a lot. But I play here, and that's it.
Yes, okay, so.
Now you
push
cannot,
the pawn, you're back to the pawn, right?
exactly. The moment the pawn pushes, he loses the shelter, and then here. Now, I have to tell you,
And coming,
yeah, that maybe you can even, I think, well, it depends again, in this position, it depends when this king is. Because if this king is like on f8, for example, I think that even this is good enough. I can just go, oh, it's white to move, sorry. Here. Okay, and the point is that after king here, okay, it's very important to go away to the short side, to go like this. And after check, here, and now I have the long side. My rook is going to check you. This is a bit more advanced. I'm not touching this one today. But just to give you ideas that this is going to be, this positions, at least black has many checks on the long side here. So maybe if this is what you meant before, about the long side, is that what you were talking about before?
No, what you showed me right before, but here rook e1 is sufficient, right, to win, to draw. Black rook e1. Is it black to win?
Yeah, but not here. That the
Rook
king,
e1 draws, right?
in this position?
Yes.
Maybe. Let's take a look. Rook
Yeah,
e1.
okay.
Oh, it's white to move though, right?
let's make a move.
I have to make a move for white.
Just move the rook to rook c8.
Ah, you want to make a bad move, but the question is, what if I make a good move? But okay, let's say here,
If black-
and you want to play here, right?
E1 is to draw. Yeah.
Okay. I know that there's this element because if king here, then king here.
Yes.
This is the point. And then if you play here, I just go down to my rank. If you play here, I go back. You can never play e6. This is the point. So yeah. So rook e1. Yeah, in this position, there are several ways to make a draw in this position, but it's a tricky position. But that was just to mention to try to answer your question from before about the long and short side.
You did, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So one last position for rook endings, and then we're going to go over some pawn endings. Let me remember how to build this position promptly. All right, let's try this position then. So in the case of a rook pawn, okay, this becomes, of course, more tricky because the king is cut off by the black rook. And we know that in order to queen this pawn, again, to win the game, you have to queen the pawn. To queen the pawn, you have to get your king out of jail. And since you don't have an -1 file or like an A- file, then it's going to be very hard. You have to just use this. You must go somehow to the B file to get out of it. But in order to do that, there is one simple rule that you must follow. The black king must be cut off to the last 3 files. In other words, you have to have the king no further than the file that he's already on. If he is on the A file, the B file, I mean, if he is on, let's say, here or here, that's no problem. Here is also okay. But if he already gets to here, then it's a draw. Then it's going to be a draw. So the winning move will be to play rook, oopsie. The mouse always insists on like 1 rank less. I like that. Okay, here. Very important to cut the king off to the last 3 ranks or files. The king cannot be allowed to cross further. Now, why is that? Well, you'll see that in this position he has nothing very productive to do. He can kill time either with his rook or with his king. Okay, let's pretend with his rook, doesn't really matter. And white is going to advance, and black can just kill time. Okay, eventually we arrive at this key position, like this. Okay? And now you say to yourself, well, this was very nice. The pawn is one square away from becoming a queen. But how is this poor king going to go? I mean, I'd love to play king somewhere there, and that's not letting me, and any other move is just illegal. So how to win? Now we see the purpose of cutting the king off exactly 3 or fewer files. We are going to play rook c2, just in time. King e7, rook c8, and now we're going to see 2 moves, king d7 and king d6. Let's start with the easy one. King d7, rook b8. Again, the timing is everything here. Now I'm ready to trade rooks. Of course, you can't afford it. And you have no time to get any closer with the king. If you could have brought your king to here, I could never get my king out, ever. So you have to play some rook move, let's say to here, away from my rook. And now, king here, threatening to queen, check. Threatening to queen again. Notice that my rook on b8 is protected. One more time, I am ready to queen. And now if you check me, I'm just running away. I don't need my king anymore because my rook is supporting the queen square, and this is of course winning. I'm threatening to queen. If you go rook a3, I'll just queen, win the rook. If you check me, well, I can just go here, for example, and now the rook can't even stop the pawn anymore. Easy, right? Everything came into place right in time, as you can see. But one thing that we need to discuss in this position, instead of king d7, I want to play a more challenging move in king d6. This is a little trickier. Again, rook b8, rook a3, king b7, rook check. Now you will notice the purpose of king d6. The king d6 doesn't allow the king to go to c5. So if you try to go this way, I'm going to check you. You have to go here. I will check you. And guess what? You're not crossing. My king doesn't let you cross. If you try king a5, I'm going to go check. And oopsie, you have to protect your pawn. I'm about to take your pawn. If you go away, I'll take it. So you have to go back. And guess who's going back again? No good. So we have to make some change in this position. After king d6, here, king b7, check. We cannot go king a6. What are we going to do? We are going to go king c8. This is still winning. The good news, this is still winning. Now, black can still try to pose some problems. He's going to go rook c3 check. He has a purpose behind this move, trust me. He wants to put his king opposite the other king. Well, we know that if the king goes to b7, we just repeat. I'll just check you again. So you have to play king d8. And now he is going to play rook, oopsie. Again, the same story. Rook h3. One more time. One more time. Black is trying to defend by means of tactics. If a8 queen, white is going to wake up to a very rude shock with rook h8 checkmate, and black wins. Well, of course, we cannot afford that. But white still has a tricky maneuver. Again, this is hard to memorize, but it's just, and it doesn't happen often, but it's just nice to kind of know. Check. Very, very nice. Now, once again, the king has a dilemma. Where is he going to go? You know? So let's say king c5, attacking the rook. And now we can play, for example, well, in this position, I think I can even play rook a6, right?
No, just check.
Ah, yeah, you check me, right. Yeah, if I go here, this is another thing. Then check. And just check forever, right? Here, check, and eventually there's going to be, yeah, I cannot go up. So I have to go, because if I go up, check is going to win the rook. So I have to go down, then check, then here, then whoops. And the white king now is too far. I want to go king here and king here. So, but there's still a win, I promise you. After we go check, here, here, threatening mate, check, here, we play this. This is very important to know. And this is now winning. Because now something very, very funny is going to happen. Either you're going to go one way or another way, but now I'm going to be able to hide. So, of course, if you take a queen with check, and queen against rook, especially when the rook is here, I'm just going to win your rook somehow too. So you have to choose between king d5 or b5. If you go, let's say, here, then I'm winning easily with this move. Just ready to queen. After you check, I go here, check, I go here. Bye-bye. The pawn is queening. Or another try. After this, to go king d5. Again, a tricky kind of move. Now, the thing is, if I go rook c8 like the example before, then black is going to play here. And again, we reach nowhere. So, after here, this time the winning move is this. Now the winning move is this. The king cannot cross. Notice the rook is saying, nah, can't cross. And now if you check me, I'm just going to go here. If you go rook a8, I just attack it. If you go check, I go here, threatening to queen. If you go check, I go here. And now your own king is sheltering me from the checks. And white is still winning. Now, I know this is a bit complicated, but like I said, this almost never happens. I've been playing chess, I played so many hundreds of games, I never even came close to having king and rook pawn versus, so that's like happens once in a million years. But again, it just shows you how with Fury you had it,
One tournament, I played one tournament in all my life.
and you had that ending,
Last rounds, tried for the win.
and you had this kind of ending. Did you win?
I was black.
Are you black? Did you manage to draw?
Yes.
Very good. You were lucky you didn't play me. I've learned this.
My king not cut up on the.
Ah, so it was, okay. Yeah, and let me show you, this is actually worth seeing.
But there
Again.
were 3 more pawns, so it should have been lost in the end probably.
He had the position I showed you, he's the one that had.
I see. Let's pretend that white doesn't know the win. Let's pretend he goes rook here. Just to show you why you must cut the king, we know that the right move is rook here. In this case, we go here. Now it's a draw. Why? Because let's say white advances, and we just kill time. Advances, advances, advances. And now it's too late, because you cannot, when you go, let's say, rook to c8, I'm just going to go here and not let you cross. Too late. You cannot get there. If you try to do it the long way, let's say you try to go from here, then the problem is king d7, rook h8, king here, rook here, rook here, and the black king is, like we know already, like a thorn in the side and just doesn't let the white king, and you can never get me out of here. You can play check, I'll go here, you can play check, I'll go here. Not useful. You can try to play maybe rook here with the point of playing rook to c2 check, but again, it's not going to go far. After this, let's say even if I'm pushed to here, okay, so what? You know, but the moment you try to show your king your face, guess who's going to come to interrupt the party? And the king, well, the only way to save the pawn is basically to go back and, okay, stay. Okay, this is a really tough ending, I know, but like I said, just to know that there's a win. Okay, now we're going to look at some pawn endings. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but some pawn endings. So my first question to you is this. How many of you think that they know all the positions of king and queen, king and pawn versus king? This position is true for almost every setup. It can happen 1 file to the left, or 2 files to the left, or 1 up rank, or 2 files to the right, or one line down. There's only one exception that I will discuss today, but for the most part, this is true for all those positions. This is what we call king behind his pawn. The white pawn goes this way, and the king is behind it. This is always a draw. No matter if it's white to move or black to move, it's always a draw. Why? Because black will never let white create a path for the pawn. He can advance it all the way to the last, almost the last rank, but then it's going to be stalemate. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, let's say white plays a waiting move, because he cannot make progress. Black simply withdraws back. Sooner or later, the white king has to show himself, and then the black king opposes him. When the two kings are right opposite one another with only 1 square behind, it's called opposition. Again, sooner or later, to make further progress, white will have to check, and the black king is just blocking the pawn. White must play here to protect it. Black is playing an ambush move. White, let's say he shows himself from this direction this time. Opposition, push the pawn, block, protect the pawn, and until now, you could have gotten away with other moves, but here you must play this move. You must play a waiting move, and no matter if the king shows himself from, let's say, this side or this side, you will oppose it. So let's say here, oppose. And if check, block, protect the pawn, stalemate. Understood? Always, always, always a draw in those positions, always. So it doesn't matter. It could be where the pawn could be here, and the king will be here, and the other king here. That's the same thing. 1 rank down, everything is the same. Okay? Everybody understood that? Yes? No? Yes?
For me, it was always important to know that the black king basically, if you make a move when you have to, you kind of stay on the same file as the pawn, in order not to get confused in triangulation.
Yes, yes. The best thing to do is always do the strategy of wait, block, wait and block, basically. It's kind of a, white has to play a move, so you kind of wait for the king to show itself, opposition, block. And I have to tell you, in this position, for example, if you play this, you don't lose. It's just a bad strategy, but you don't lose, because even if white gets the opposition, guess what? You can still play here, and after push the pawn, you can still go backwards, and it's still a draw. But just to be accurate, the strategy should always be waiting. After this, you should always play a waiting move. When the king shows itself, then you oppose. When the king checks you, when the pawn checks you, you block and wait, force white to defend the pawn, and then you ambush. When you ambush, then whenever the king is showing himself, once here or the other way, it doesn't matter, then you will oppose, and then after the check, it'll be a stalemate. Always a draw. We'll see one exception to that in a second. Now, we will see a different position. We'll see the same king here, same kind of thing. Let me just get rid of those. And I'm going to put the pawn here this time. Now this is different. Here the king is in front of his pawn. And well, it depends who's on the move. It really, now, before it didn't matter. It would have been a draw regardless. Either black would have played a waiting move or white would have played a waiting move. It's the same. Here it's very important. Why? You have to think about it in a logical way. Whoever played the last move managed to get the opposition. In other words, if white's last move was king to e3. If black made the last move, then he played king e3, king e5 himself. So let's pretend it's white to move. It's very quickly going to turn into a draw. It's black to move. So let's start with black to move.
You can hit S and change the order.
No, it doesn't matter. I can just start with black. If black to move, he loses. Why does he lose? Because he has to break the opposition. He has to choose a side. And the white king is going to choose the other side. And whenever the king is going to come here, we're just going to oppose. You have to choose a side. We're going to break like this. And the king is going to try to break the pawn. Now we just have to count moves so we always have the opposition. For example, this would be a terrible move now because you're just going to play king d7, and guess who has the opposition? Black. White will have to play here. Well, we already know when the king is in front of his pawn, it's going to be a draw. So you can't do that. But instead, if you would have just played e3, and let's say the king has the opposition, then you will play e4. Notice the king is still in front of his pawn. Who has the opposition? White. So after this, and again, the black king is going to have to choose a side. Let's say he goes this way. We are going to break through the other way. He is going to make some move, let's say here, for example, to prevent me from coming with the king to here. Then here. Now you choose a side, and I'm choosing the other side, and my pawn is marching all the way to the queening square. This is much, much easier than you think, believe me. You just have to understand in this position that always be in control. The idea is to clear the path to the pawn, and black cannot stop it, no matter what he does. If you went this way, or if you went, let's try just to show, if he goes, let's say, the other way, then of course white is going to break through from this side. And if you play here, then I can just play here. No matter what you do, if you block the king, I'm just going to play here. My pawn will always give me enough moves to gain the opposition in case that black temporarily got it. So let's say, for example, black plays here, then I can play e3. If you try to regain the opposition, I'm going to play e4, and I have the opposition. You will pick a side, and I'm going to pick the other side. And every single time, my pawn is going to queen. Is this understood? Yes? Okay. Now, in the case of, let me just do this where it's white to move. Here we have white to move. Then we see that very quickly this is going to turn into king behind his pawn, which is the draw that we learned before. Let's say white does this, and black immediately opposes him. If white tries to come back, black comes back. If he goes this way, then we go this way. Sooner or later, you have to push your pawn, either 1 or 2 squares, doesn't matter. And then we already know this is the position we saw in the beginning of the pawn exercise. White will have to do something like this. We're going to wait, show, oppose, until the stalemate, all the way to the stalemate. Now, like everything else in life, okay, there is an exception, and we're going to discuss the exception right now, and then we're going to be done. Okay, so the exception is when the pawn is on the 5th rank. When a pawn reaches the 5th rank, it doesn't matter who has the move. This is always a win. Always. Well, it's easy to tell that if it's black to move, well, we'll see it in a second as black to move. As a matter of fact, I want to see it first. It's important. If it's black to move, it's really easy. He's going to choose one side, we're going to go the other side, and the pawn goes in, in, in. Okay, that was child's play, right? That was very easy. We already know how to win this. So the question is, why is it winning even with white to move? After all, it seems like black is going to get the opposition. The problem is he is running out of board. What do I mean? After king d6, let's say he opposes, and I will push my pawn, and you will play the waiting move, and I will push the pawn. Normally you go backwards one move, and then you show yourself and oppose me when I show myself. But you ran out of board. You have to go out, unfortunately for you, and now my king comes in and I win. Do we understand? So that when the pawn is already on the 5th rank, too late. No matter who's on the move, it's always, always, always a win. Okay? And as a dessert, because I knew that I would forget to show it, so I will show it to you now. Just one little thing. Okay, if this is the position, then again, if it's white to move, it's very important to give black the opportunity to run out to the freedom so you can queen your pawn. So if this is white to move, the right move is king a6. And the point is, of course, that after this, 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 easy, right? Easy, easy. Now you might say, hey Aviv, why am I not going this way? I want to win this way. Well, the problem with this way is that black plays the move king a7. And this could be a devilish trick because that's the edge of the board. And this, now white better be smart and repeat the position. In other words, he should play here, 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 here to repeat, and then win with this move, just like I showed you. Why? Let me show you. This could be a trick when somebody doesn't know. But if you play, let's say king c6, king a7, and let's pretend that you play b6, that's already a draw. I'm just going to go king here. Now it's a draw. Too late. If you play b7, I block, and we have stalemate. That's one way. Or, if you try to play here, what do we have? Stalemate again. Exactly. So you are stuck. And the same thing is to be said after king a6 here. If you go here, here, and you must play king b6 to repeat the position. If you play here, it's a stalemate. Very good. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.